guess we'll just write over it.
Yeah, they didn't have anything on it anyway.
Okay, so. Okay, well, we restarted it.
Any lookup if you could see or hear anything in internet land.
Vicky asked if anybody was receiving anything, and Alice Marie in San Diego said no, and Michelle in Santa Cruz said no. Jan Butler in Port Angela said no. Martha in New Orleans said no. So nobody's.
That's a big fat no.
that covered things pretty good. Didn't it?
Yeah, I think.
You're on.
Okay.
We're on? Oh, dang.
Now it's a big fat yes.
Okay, I'm going to go up to camera.
Greetings. All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for bearing with us through our technical difficulties. Not precisely sure what just happened, but I'm sure it was far less difficult than Renee Koval having to row her boat back to her island today so that she could attend class tonight. So everyone present and everyone watching this on the internet, let's give Renee a big hand, not only for her rowing feat, but Renee became a hermetician this week, so congratulations, Renee. Tonight's class is on Mars, and already I've heard from one person in our internet audience that their printer broke down. But those of you who are tuning in for the first time, you will be able to go back and watch the other archived classes. This is class 5. So we're halfway, no, class 4, excuse me. I can't count.
This is Venus here.
Yes, take one.
Okay, where's the one on Mars?
Next week.
Oh, next week, okay.
We did Mercury last week.
Yes.
Am I correct, or am I lost in a twilight zone somewhere?
I was here last week.
Those are supposed to be class 4.
Last week?
No, this one.
This is class 4.
Correct.
See, we're confused in more ways than one. I'm certain this is class 4 and we're doing Mercury today. I mean, Venus. That shows you my certainty. Next week will be Mars. And oh, so I've got the wrong chart
Marianne
up
says,
here.
I thought you were doing Venus.
I am. Thank you for reminding me, Marianne. I've got the wrong chart. All right. I am going to start tonight's class letting you know, as I said, you can go back and watch the archives. Come on in.
I'm sorry.
Here is a wonderful quote from Oscar Wilde. Download your handouts, which you can find on the right-hand side of your screen. They will have the chart that we're using tonight. And last week I had some complaints because the images I showed up on the slideshow were very hard to read off the computer screen. But the very same chart is in all of your handout package. So by printing that out, you'll be able to look at that closely. Those of you over 50, if you have reading glasses, that will aid in the process. I actually print my notes out in .16 font so that I can actually see them here as I teach the class. So, Oscar Wilde, no object is so beautiful that under certain conditions it will not look ugly. That was my quote for Venus. Venus is the brightest object in the night sky after the moon. Venus is referred to as the morning star or evening star and achieves her maximum brightness just before sunrise or just after sunset. The planet Venus takes 225 days to make a complete cycle through the zodiac, spending less than 19 days in each sign. Venus is never more than 47 degrees from the Sun and therefore can only form parallel, conjunction, semi-sextile, and semi-square aspects to the Sun. Venus is unique among the planets in that she rotates in a clockwise direction, a condition that is very puzzling to scientists. Although all planetary orbits are elliptical, Venus's orbit is the closest to being completely circular. Now, Venus in mythology. Humans have been looking at this bright star in the heavens, this Venus, for millennia. The ancient Egyptians referred to Venus as Hathor's star. Hathor was frequently symbolized as a cow, the symbol of fertility. The Greeks and Romans in Egypt associated Hathor with Aphrodite. To the Sumerians, Venus was known as Astarte. To the Phoenicians, Inanna, and to the Babylonians, she was Ishtar. All represented the personification of feminine beauty and love. In Greek mythology, Venus, or Aphrodite, was born from the ocean's foam after Kronos castrated Uranus and threw his genitals in the sea. That's an image for you. Many images picture her rising on a shell out of the ocean. The most famous pictured here is Botticelli's Birth of Venus. Apples, limes, myrtle, pomegranates, and roses were considered sacred to the goddess. Among animals, she rules dolphins, doves, sparrows, and swans. In Aztec traditions, the planet Venus was considered masculine and associated in her form as the morning star with Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent, and as the evening star. Venus was depicted as Quetzalcoatl's twin brother, the dog-headed Xolotl.
Christopher?
Yes.
Phil mentions that for our viewers out there, there is a little link that if they're on a Mac or if they're having any trouble, they can click on that link and it brings up a different viewer, which I found works very well for us.
Where is the link?
Well, it's down below the screen. It's down below the video screen. You may have to scroll down.
Okay, I hope everyone heard that. If not, if you're on a Mac, chances are you can't hear it anyways. But for those of you out there, if you are using a Mac, scroll down and there is a link at the bottom of the screen for you to go on to.
At the bottom, just under the video window.
Under the video window. Hopefully you heard Paul, as he knows what he was talking about. To the Hindus, Venus is the male god Shukra, who holds a stick, beads, a lotus, and sometimes a bow and arrow. Although masculine, Shukra represents feminine qualities in a horoscope. Freitag, or Friday, is named after Frigga, the Old Norse equivalent for Venus. In Latin, Dies Veneris, or Day of Venus, is the name for Friday. This became Viernes in Spanish, Venerdì in Italian, Vendredi in French, and Venere in Romanian. In Portuguese, this is Sexta-feira, the sixth day. In ancient Masonry, C.C. Zane talks about the symbolism of the planet Venus, and he says, Venus is symbolized by the circle of spirit surmounting the cross of matter. It indicates inspiration, which expresses itself as blind love and art. Grace, exquisiteness, and beauty in all its forms are typified. But the soul being absent, impulse preponderates, and there is submission to more positive natures. Lovers of society, innocent and refined, the natives of Venus are mirthful, pleasure-seeking, and convivial. But because reason is absent, they possess little moral power. These are people we like to be around. Aphrodite, springing from the ocean foam, expresses her lightness and grace. Venus is the planet expressing that one of the 7 principles of nature, the qualities of which are lightness, joy, mirthfulness, and clinging affection. Venus attracts friendship and socializing, affection or romantic opportunities, gratuities, gifts, pleasure, experiences with beauty and the arts. Her thought cell are social. Wherever Venus falls in your chart, and we'll see this again later tonight when we talk about Venus moving through the houses, that area of your life is subject to gratuities. Now, what are gratuities? Anyone know?
Nice.
Nice things.
Yeah. Gifts or
Gifts of some kind. Oftentimes, if we leave money for a waiter or waitress, we call it a gratuity, a tip. So, little gifts. These aren't necessarily huge things. So, somebody once told me somebody left her a $400 tip. That is certainly a gratuity.
I was given $1,000 one once too.
All right.
Whoa, you're special.
You are special.
The only time my whole
I have to
life.
touch you before the night is over. Yes. That would be Venus too. I think that's gratuitous sex. Now, the positive trait of Venus is affection. Her negative trait is summarized in the word pliancy. Venus can be very yielding. Venus is a planet that is conditioned. Thus far, over the last 3 weeks, we've looked at the Sun, Moon, and Mercury, all which are neutral planets. But Venus as the lesser benefic. This is a term that was coined by Manlius, I think in the 2nd century. Could be wrong with that. But she is responsible in the chart for 1/4 harmony. This means that any planet she enters in aspect with, she adds 1/4 harmony to that aspect. Zane goes on to say, in delineating the horoscope, the Venus person needs social expression to be at his best. He is fastidious and loves grace, music, and the artistic. He is unfitted for a life of solitude. Companionship is essential. His best quality is affection, and his worst quality is pliancy. He is entirely too desirous of pleasing others and in finding the line of least resistance. He is not fitted for hard or heavy work, but requires employment where charm of manner becomes an asset. He should early realize that he more often truly pleases when he asserts strength of character. The thoughts ruled by this planet are called the social thoughts. He goes on in horary astrology to describe the Venus appearance as being plump and handsome, tending to light complexion, mirthful, and affable. So, if Venus rules the first house in a chart, found in conjunction or strong aspect to the ascendant. These are, again, physical appearance possibilities. Now, in the perspective of alchemy, Venus governs the... Oh, sorry, I'm jumping ahead of my notes. Okay, Venus has both harmonious and discordant expressions. I'm going back to my Oscar Wilde quote here. No object is so beautiful that under certain conditions it will not look ugly. So, the beautiful side of Venus is expressing with heightened creativity, affection or romantic opportunities, gifts and gratuities. Someone here got $1,000. Increased cultural interest and greater ease. How do these concepts make you feel? Yeah, serve them up. I'd take one of each.
Yeah.
Discordant Venus, however, brings loss of love, disappointment with friends, creative blocks, laziness, and over-sensuality. Well, all of them but the last sound pretty bad. So, this is a repeat, except the metal in alchemy is copper. If you think about it, copper has been used since the Bronze Age for creating alloys. This is combining together other dissimilar metals into a uniquely different form. So copper and tin create bronze, copper and zinc create brass. Each of these subsequent alloys have qualities that make them stronger or more durable than their separate metals. The gemstones associated with Venus are both amber, which is not really a stone, but it is fossilized tree sap, and coral, also not truly a mineral, but this is oftentimes the petrified form of a oceanic life form. I'm not even sure what to call coral. It's not really a plant, it's not quite an animal.
They call them animals, don't they?
Do they? They are animals? Okay.
I think so.
If there's any biologists out there, you can write in on our notes there on the left side of your screen and let us know what genus corals belong to. The color associated with Venus is yellow. Think something that is warm and bright and cheerful. Yet the color yellow, if you think about it, urine is yellow, which is our passing off of impurities. Also, if your skin starts to turn yellow, you need to be worried. So yellow can also be a color of toxicity. The musical tone of E, can anyone sound that for us? E. Part of the body, hair, skin, ovaries, and thyroid. I think I left out the ovaries and thyroid. So, how do these social urges develop in life forms other than human? If you think about it, the nature of Venus is to mate. Venus is the glue, it's the alloy, it's what brings disparate energies together. And in order to pass on DNA, all of life forms have had to discover a way in which to be attractive to one another. Plants, not all plants, but some plants cross-pollinate. I think that's Washington, D.C.
It doesn't look like now, that
No, it's not Washington now. If you're dialing in from Washington, I think it's white out there. The other, some create beautiful blooms to ensure propagation. If you think about it, not only have plants created blooms to attract butterflies and bees and moths to them, but what have human beings done? The plants that create the most spectacular or the most colorful blooms, humans have ensured that they continue to be propagated. If you look at all of the gardens around town, you will find species that are not necessarily native to this area, but through human assistance have been spread far and wide across the world. So just like some plants create burrs that catch themselves in your socks in order to get transported, other plants have figured out even more socially complex ways to ensure that they pass on their DNA, and that's through human assistance. Very clever, those plants. Now, some animals mate for life and cannot bear to be parted. And since I'm partially blind, I don't know what we're looking at. Oh, these are mourning doves. If you ever have them in your yard and the cat gets one of them, the other sticks around and cries. It's a really sad experience. Some animals find mutual benefit through living in herds. This creates defensiveness and a means of protecting the young. The young animals are the most vulnerable. These are the social urges at work. Human beings fall into the category of social animals. Human beings are inclined towards being in a pack. And because of that, we seek companionship, whether it's through mating one-on-one, gathering circles of friends, belonging to groups or organizations, pulling together in communities and congregations. These are all facets of the social urges of the soul. So, what Zane says, and I believe this is in Mental Alchemy, through experience with companionship and mating in lower forms of life, the social thought elements that now occupy the astral body of man were built into his finer form. They are mapped in the birth chart by the planet Venus and expressed as affection, friendship, mirthfulness, conjugality, and inhabitiveness. Those who successfully express artistic talents have the social thought elements prominent in their stellar bodies. Thinking about mating, about companionship, about love, and about affection in its various manifestations attracts into the life such fortune or misfortune as friendship and affection bring. Discordant thoughts energized by such emotions are responsible for much disease of the kidneys, of the venous blood system, of the thyroid gland, of the internal or sex organs, and female trouble and the so-called social diseases. Often, however, in these complaints, aggressive thought elements also play a part. What he's saying there, if you have problems in those areas described, Mars is going to also be a factor along with Venus. All right. Time for vocabulary building. You have copies of these at home. I'm going to run through the words which are listed, again, not by concept, but in alphabetical order. But they will give you ideas about the different qualities of Venus. Aesthetic, affable, affectionate, agreeable, amorous, artistic, attentive, attractive, beautiful, caring, charming, companionable, convivial, cordial, creative, demonstrative, elegant, fashionable, friendly, graceful, gracious, gregarious, hospitable, kind, loving, pleasant, poised, popular. These are all very alliterative. Refined, sociable, stylish, tender, warm, welcoming, and well-mannered. How do those ideas make you feel? Somebody you want to be around. However, You might also know her in this form. Because remember, no eye is so beautiful that under certain conditions it will not look ugly. The negative traits of Venus express as being acquiescent, coy, debauched, decadent, dissolute, dissipated, docile, fawning, flamboyant, flattering, flirtatious, garish, gaudy, lazy, lurid, idle, indolent, lethargic, languid, obsequious, overly sensual, submissive, tasteless, tawdry, permissive, plastic, pliant, self-indulgent, sycophantic, and yielding. These generally aren't people we want to be around unless they're sycophantic. Though we do like it when people acquiesce to us. But too much is too much. So think about it. The negative traits of Venus have to do with the qualities of over-sensualism in one of its form, or the sense of being sickeningly sweet. Speaking of sickeningly sweet, the type of occupations that Venus persons are attracted to are such as artists, beauticians, candy makers, caterers, confectioners, costumers, debutantes, there's a profession for you, decorators, designers, escorts, event planners, fashion designers, florists, graphic artists, hairdressers, the host or hostess, a lyricist, a maîtresse, a jeweler, makeup artist, anybody who functions as a matchmaker, a musician, painter, pastry chef, poet, receptionist, sculptor, set decorator, or socialite. Oops, what happened? This quote comes to us from the Beginner's Horoscope Maker and Reader, and it's actually very long, so bear with me. Venus. The thyroid secretions and those of the gonads respond to Venus, and mating, companionship, affection, and love are expressions of the thought cells mapped by this planet. I want to make sure I was on the same page. These thought cells, which so powerfully influence all phases of social activity, have been organized in lower forms of life through experiences with companionship and mating. Because their chief expression relates to the social life, they are called social thought cells. Aspects to Venus affect the emotions, the social relations, and the artistic appreciation. To the extent the thought cells mapped by Venus are active, is the life influenced by thoughts of affection, friendship, beauty, art, mirth, conjugality, or inhabitiveness. I might actually have to look that word up. Is that wanting to cohabit with
I
someone?
would think so.
Yeah.
He made up a few words.
I think that's one of them. All right, he goes on to say, when Venus is prominent in the birth chart, it denotes one who is fastidious and who loves grace, music, and the artistic. Such a person, to be at his best, needs social expression. Companionship is essential. He is unfitted for a life of solitude. Instead of seeking hard and heavy work, he does better where artistic ability or charm of manner is an asset. When prominent and afflicted, there is a tendency towards pliancy. He is entirely too eager to please others and to find the line of least resistance. The earlier he learns that the more often he pleases, that he more often pleases when he asserts strength of character, the more certain he is of finding satisfactory expression for his affection. So, beginner's horoscope maker and reader. Well, let us look at a Venus personality. Hopefully, you can all see this chart on your screen. And if not, it is on your handouts on the very back page. Pull out your reading glasses, you should be able to see it. In this chart, what is curious, Venus, although powerful, falls. There, if you see my cursor on your screen, Venus falls at 23 degrees Scorpio, 8 minutes, in the second house. Those of you who have spent some time studying this know that the second house governs
Money, personal possessions.
yes, one's money, personal possessions, assets, and one's values. Now, generally speaking, we would assume that the most powerful planet in a chart would actually fall in an angle. And in this chart, actually the strongest planet is not truly a planet, it is an angle, and that is the midheaven. So chances are, with a dominant midheaven, and due to the fact that I'm using a chart in this class, it's a notable person. It's going to be somebody that, a name that hopefully most of you will recognize. And I'm sorry, but the order, I believe, for all of you, the order of the planets is the natural order. But if you go down the center column, which shows percentage of power, you'll see that the midheaven has 11.5% of the astrogine power. Next in strength is Venus at 10.8% of the power. And then the moon, which we might automatically, something happened. Come back. Go forward. Let's see if I can do it here. Here you can see the midheaven is the strongest, followed by Venus, and then the moon is only 0.1% less than Venus. But it was hard for me to find a Venus chart. It was even harder for me to find a Mars chart for next week. So we work with what we have. Let's move forward in this chart. In fact, we'll look at the aspects. Come back. Come back. There we go. The line that just showed up on the screen in invisible ink passes here. To read an spectrograph, for those of you who are just joining us this week or haven't spent a lot of time poring over charts, if you go down on the left-hand column, these are the symbols for the planets. This is the glyph for Venus, which we're talking about tonight. If you go across the top, you see the glyphs for the planets, here being the glyph for Venus as well. Oops.
Can I ask you what the MR means?
You're the second person to ask that question tonight.
Oh, did someone just ask it?
No, yes, you're sleeping somewhere. No, they actually, before you entered the room, somebody asked. And if you look on the chart and you see a circle with MR, in this case, in the second line from the moon to Uranus, you see MR, and that is an abbreviation for mutual reception. Over the last 3 weeks, we've been slowly, as we go through the planets and the signs, learning what are called essential dignities. And these are the relationships of the planets as they fall in different signs. In this case, we see the moon in this chart. No, stop. Oh, well, that shows you who it is.
Oh.
All right, I'm trying to get my cursor down here. Sorry, guys, I'm struggling between these two forms. But when I move my cursor, what happens is we end up going backwards through. Does anyone see the cursor showing up?
No, there it is.
All right. Now, to attempt to show you mutual reception, the moon, 9 degrees Aquarius, 2 minutes. Uranus, 26 degrees Cancer, 29 minutes. Well, we know they're not really, well, maybe they are in an aspect. Moon to Uranus, yes, they're in an opposition. But the mutual reception is the moon is in the home sign of Uranus, which is Aquarius. Uranus is in the home sign of the moon, which is Cancer. So they're in mutual reception to one another. And this creates a certain bond between planets when they are in reciprocal signs. That answer your question?
Me? Yes. Yes.
Yes, okay. Now we move on? Or not? Oh yes, there's my famous ink. Okay, the dominant Venus personality belongs to Denzel Washington.
Oh.
Tell me that's not a charming smile.
That's a very charming smile.
Yeah. All right. If you went back to look at some of the occupational description that we gave earlier, well, here you've got an actor, screenwriter, director, producer. It's somebody who is working in an area of the arts. We call these theater arts or cinematic arts. So this is somebody who works, and actually Venus is in the second house. This is somebody who earns their living. I imagine from the box office hits he's had that he makes a good living through being an artist. He's also somebody with that dominant midheaven who has received recognition through the career. So he's been awarded 3 Golden Globes and 2 Academy Awards. It's a big deal in his profession. Denzel Washington Jr. has a BA in drama and journalism from Fordham University. Now, one of the other factors of Venus is what? It's bonding, mating. And this is somebody who has remained married for 26 years. Well, look at Venus. What's her closest relationship in the chart? She conjunct Saturn.
Yeah, that's really
Although it's in the house of money, if you just think of it, the safety urges and the social urges are in a prominent compound.
Right.
There is this desire to stay together or stick it out in love. You know, 26 years is a long time in that particular, in Hollywood culture, or in American culture at this point.
It's a grand trine too, between the Mars, between the Mars and Venus, or is the Uranus in a part?
Let me go back to the aspect, or I have them in front of me here. All right, Venus forms a trine to Mars, she forms a trine to Jupiter, and a trine to Uranus. And Mars has the trine to Saturn, the trine to Uranus as well. So
Pretty
the answer
harmonious.
to your question is yes. Venus is involved in a grand trine in this chart, conjunct Saturn, and the Venus-Saturn conjunction both trine Mars, and they both trine the Moon-Uranus conjunction as well. Excuse me, that's Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. So the specific aspect I want to talk about tonight, and although there is not a direct correlation between the nature of aspects and the planets themselves, the order in which I've been teaching them to you has sort of a slight reminiscence to the nature of the planets. We looked at the conjunction, the prominence compound, when we studied the Sun. We moved on to the semi-sextile, the growth compound, when we looked at the Moon. The friction compound with Mercury, the semi-square. Tonight, in Venus, we're going to look at the sextile. The sextile is interpreted as being an opportunity aspect, an opportunity compound. This means whenever the qualities of the two planets that are brought together in a sextile tend to enhance one another and drive each other towards opportunities. Now the sextile is formed, you can see the word 60 here, in sextile. And it's formed when two planets are 60 degrees apart. That means they are 2 signs apart. Now the sextile aspect is quite harmonious. Its energy manifests as opportunities in manners represented by 2 planets, but it does not necessarily represent good things without exercising some effort. So you can have sextiles in your chart, but to reap the reward from sextiles, you have to give a little shove in the direction of the planets governed by that. And the good signified by the sextile requires that opportunities be developed as they present themselves. So, as we all know about opportunities that come up in our lives, unless we take the opportunities, things don't happen. So, it's also not necessarily expecting things to fall in your lap, but the nature of the sextile is when something's presented, you have to act upon it. Does that make sense to all of you?
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But you'll find in your own charts that where you have sextiles, these are going to be areas in your life where opportunities have presented themselves, whether or not you've attached yourself to the opportunity. So let's take Denzel's chart and see if we can't find some sextiles. We'll bring up the
I only see one.
aspects, and I'll bet it's the same one that I see.
I bet it is.
What a surprise.
Yes. What we have here is the planet the planet Neptune in a sextile aspect with Pluto. But what did we talk about last week when we looked at a chart? Aspects between these outer planets, between Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto to one another, are generational aspects. These planets move along at such a slow speed that the aspects formed by them last for years at a time. So chances are those born during the same year as Mr. Washington have this same aspect. Now, what determines the uniqueness of how it expresses is the house position in which the planets fall. But let's work with our language here and see see if I can go forward a screen. And we'll use our language. Well, you're right, Vicki. There is only one sextile in the sample chart. Here it is. Neptune in the first house. How's Neptune in the first house for dramatic ability?
Yeah.
Neptune in the first
Classic.
house is like being a chameleon. You can take on the coloring of your environment, which actors have to do. They truly have to so identify with a role that they're able to take that on. Now, those actors who are particularly sensitive that I've worked with will oftentimes say when they're in a role, it's certainly hard to get out of it. It's something that haunts you. You take it on with you into your relationship because you're basically becoming a channel almost. You're becoming mediumistic to the character that you're portraying. Now, not everyone does it that way, but some find in their method that's how they work. So Neptune's in the first house here, which is significant for somebody in the performing arts. Its aspect is to Pluto. So we have a combination here of Neptune, the utopian urges, which make one a dreamer or a schemer, has imagination and dramatic ability, can sway the public, to the universal welfare urges, which can express either as cooperation or coercion. My guess, in terms of how this works, that this is someone who has been able to use both talent, first house, ability, and friendships. Pluto governs groups. This could be through one's union. It could be through congregations or through organizations or groups of certain type. It's a great aspect for networking. So the opportunities that are indicated in this chart are opportunities for using one's personal talent to sway groups or organizations and to be able to advance oneself. You can see Jupiter and Uranus are conjunct in the 10th house. And Jupiter's fairly strong. So, what might otherwise not be noted in this chart, but Denzel Washington is actually very devout Christian and belongs to a Christian community in Los Angeles.
It's a fun Christian community, isn't it?
Yeah, I
You've
believe
got
so.
Uranus, Jupiter up there.
It would be radical religion.
It's real. I think it's on the fringes.
Yeah, very radical type of religion, and so there you have it, and probably benefits through contacts or connections made within those types of groups as well. Any, now let's see if anything else comes up here. So we said the utopian urges are engaged in an opportunity compound with the universal welfare urges.
Just a question, you mentioned it being a generational thing, so would be people within that age group that would have this sextile? How many years does this particular one span?
I think I have that. I don't know precisely. I'd have to sit down with a ephemeris and, plot their position over.
Right, but they fall
But
into
you have the same aspect?
Yeah, I've
I
got
do.
two. I've
Yeah.
got two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So chances are, because both planets, Pluto and Neptune, move what is it, roughly 200 years? And
But it'd be in a different house. For,
well, that's determined. You've got to figure every 2 hours the house position has changed. So even depending on when you were born, within the 40s to the
50, yeah.
50s into the 60s even,
yeah.
this aspect was in place. But in each person's chart, they're showing up in different house positions.
Because my Neptune's in the first,
Mm-hmm.
but the Pluto's kind of off in the 12th. So I don't know how that works.
That means you were probably born in the very southern part of Australia.
Well, southeast, yeah.
Okay. So, what do you know the latitude of?
My latitude?
Yeah. Is
Well,
it like 47 south or?
oh, I see, 33 south, 48
No, not
north.
too south. That's not too far. That's. But
Well, I always think of that as being like you're idealistic about your desire to work for the benefit of humanity, kind of thing.
yeah, and if you think about it, that's a great description, Vicki. If you think about it, everyone from our generations, spanning a couple of decades, truly are the ones, well, look who's in the room tonight. And I imagine if we looked at who's out there in internet land, they're the same people from these generations. Some might go into the realms, what we're studying would be considered radical in some ways by people of other groups whose religions we might find to be radical.
Well, I guess it would have been a key element in the peace love revolution thing too. This aspect.
Sure.
Right. What were people doing in the 60s? They were love ends. These were groups. Neptune being the upper octave of Venus. This is utopian love or universal brotherhood done on a group level, where people would just come together and groove with one another. So there was that whole movement going on. There was also there were mass efforts towards peace during that period of time as well.
But it's interesting also that when you talk about the dramatic side of it, is that because of the placement or is it because of the nature of the...
What matters, share with me in this room what matters the first house rules.
So?
Self-appearance, personality, self-expression. Neptune is considered the dramatic planet, so having it in the first house of self-expression, it gives one dramatic ability, and again what I call the chameleon-like ability to take on, if you think of Neptune as being somewhat psychic and mediumistic, it takes on character of whatever one is performing.
Well, it's the upper octave of Venus, so it's the social urges that are on more more astral level. You have that charisma, that ability to bond.
Right, it's no longer being cute.
Right.
It's having charisma. It's having a quality where somebody doesn't just find you physically attractive.
Right.
There are other mesmerizing personal traits that people are drawn to. So Neptune in the first house can really be the real Svengali type of position of being, come hither, come yon, being able to, pull someone into your aura. So, where did he go?
Away.
Yeah, that's somebody who has a lot of charisma. It's not just good looks. There's something about him that is very magnetic and very compelling. And it does come across in the variety of dramatic performances that he gives. So let's talk about Venus in the signs. All right, the planet Venus takes 225 days to make a complete cycle through the zodiac. This means she spends less than 19 days in each sign. Now, of course, this varies when you have Venus going retrograde in a sign and then going direct again, which she does, but nevertheless, every 3 weeks, Venus is passing into a new sign. That's pretty swift, if you think about it. The Venus sign, or sign of the zodiac, oops. In which Venus falls in the birth chart, is considered to represent the sensual. I've actually lost portions of my notes here. The sensual and romantic nature of the individual and the way in which we express our affections. So, here we have the sign of Aries. If you think about it, Venus is very sensitive, creative, pliant. What happens when she's placed in the sign of Aries? Which is assertive, aggressive, and competitive.
Doesn't get along very well.
It's a little jarring, don't you think? What Zane says in Beginner's Horoscope Maker and Reader is that the social thought cells expressing from the I am attitude. The affection should be ardent and harmonious rather than exacting and impulsively given. Now, if you think about it, Aries is opposite Venus's home in the sign of Libra, the sign of peace and harmony. So she's considered to be at her detriment in Aries. What happens with Venus in Aries is she comes across as being a little too aggressive. Venus in Aries seems, hot to trot, basically. And for some, that is off-putting, because how do people want Venus to behave?
Mild.
Sweet, demure, and mild. Now, in the sign of Taurus, Venus rules the sign of Taurus. She's considered to be at home in this sign. With the social thought cells expressing from the I have attitude, the affection should be sociable and demonstrative rather than too greatly influenced by worldly possessions. Venus is sensual, and Taurus is the sign of the collector. So Venus in Taurus can be very good at gathering collections. This is part of the I have series, the possessive series of Venus. That's the other downside of Venus in Taurus, is one can look at love from the aspect of, how would you call it? Objectifying someone?
Could it be also that someone is just very attached to possessions, and just retentive about
Yes,
them?
not just possessions, but people.
Oh, okay.
Venus and Taurus can be retentive of the people in their life. But nevertheless, this is her home sign, and, it's the perfect environment for her to be sensual and to collect, great fabrics and CDs and music and, lovely things. A few bonbons in bed ain't bad either. So. In the sign of Gemini, Zane says, or Benjamin says, with the social thought cells expressing from the I think attitude, the affections should lend themselves to intellectual companionship rather than to inconstancy. What is Venus like in Gemini?
Very
Ideas,
fickle.
ideas.
You know, think of the double mint gum commercial. Double your pleasure, double your fun. If one's good, two is better. The person with Venus in Gemini has trouble dating just one person. They get bored.
Yeah.
They need constant stimulus. And the qualities that they're looking for in love are rarely contained in one person. So, Zane is suggesting here that you better like the sound of their voice.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because in the end, you know, that's what you're stuck with. You better love their conversation and companionship. But the nature of Venus in Gemini is to bed hop, so to speak, or to, like a butterfly, flit from flower to flower, seeking nectar and thinking the next flower is always more beautiful. Anyone here with Venus in Aries, Taurus, or Gemini?
I've got my progressed in Taurus.
Okay. Natal chart, anyone? No? I don't have it at any of those signs. All right, Venus in Cancer. With the social thought cells expressing from the I feel attitude, the affections should seek satisfaction in the domestic life rather than suffer in shrinking timidity. Well, what's he implying here? Venus in Cancer.
Not really good in the outside world.
Yeah, this is the wallflower, Venus in
I
Cancer.
have Venus in Cancer. And
Well,
I
how'd you do with the barn dance?
like barn dancing.
Yeah. I would imagine.
So you get a lot of comfort from being in a home or a
Oh, I
place that
love
you feel
being
at
at
home.
home.
Yeah.
I love being at home and
Venus in Cancer wants to entertain at home. It's where they feel most comfortable. It's where they can find their serving dishes. That's what it boils down to. You can do a more beautiful spread if you've got the right, pieces there. Wow them with food. But Venus in Cancer. Cancer tends towards touchiness and sensitivity. And Venus there gets hurt very easily in that sign. And because of that, in social situations, she tends towards being timid and drawing back because she never knows when something will be perceived as a slight. And that stings. And Venus in Cancer takes some time to recover. Which in a social situation, you've got to think on your feet and respond quickly, and not look in total aghast at what comes out of other people's mouths.
So it would be easily shocked, not so much shocked because
Hurt.
something,
hurt.
yeah, hurt, but the whole system would be kind of going into a startle thing.
It can be, one can be startled by people. But again, Venus in Cancer, think of the crab is tenacious. When they do fall in love, they fall in love hard and they hold on.
right. And I think it matters the aspects it makes too, and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
It modifies it.
The harmony of the
Yeah.
planet is very much dependent on which of the expressions happen here.
Christopher, a comment from Phil in Kalamazoo. He says, it's interesting. My son has Neptune in his first house. And he's in theater
Yeah.
too.
Aren't we surprised? All right, Venus in Leo. With the social thought cells expressing from the I will attitude. The affections should seek satisfaction through children and entertainment, rather than in dramatization.
So dramatization as a negative.
Yeah,
Drama seeking.
people who have big drama in their
Drama
lives.
queens, yeah.
Yeah.
That's Venus in Leo. It's like,
Yeah, everything. big.
Part the curtains, I'm on the proscenium. Turn on the limelight.
Look at me.
Here I am.
Here I am.
However, in Leo, Venus is opposite her harmony in Aquarius. She's at her in harmony. And it can make, Venus and Leo can tend towards being gaudy and attention calling. Think of like outfits at the Country Music Awards or something like that.
Like a
I hope I'm not offending
a
anyone
bad
here.
taste Dolly Parton.
Well,
Right.
I think,
I don't know if she has Venus and Leo,
No,
but
but
that would be a great,
Not her, but a bad taste version of
Right,
her.
yes. A drag queen doing dark would be very Venus and Leo. Get that image in your head.
Right.
All right, Venus in Virgo, another tough spot for Venus. With the social thought cells expressing from the I analyze attitude, the affection should be given spontaneous encouragement rather than hampered too greatly by cold reason.
That's difficult. I mean, that's a difficult. That would be quite difficult to do.
Virgo is the virgin.
Mm.
This is not a warm, fuzzy, affectionate sign. It's thinking, of what's proper and improper. So, what happens also in Virgo, she's opposite her exaltation, which means she's at her fall in the sign of Virgo, and she can actually come across in that sign as being a little cool, a little standoffish, or a little prudish in her attitudes.
And in a way that can be sometimes seen as inappropriate to situations.
yeah.
Just putting a damper on even when there's
Oh yeah, if it's a
opportunity,
costume
like-
party.
like-
With the social thought cells expressing from the I balance attitude, the affection should be given only after careful thought, rather than permitted free response to flattery.
Wow.
Yeah, Venus in Libra has trouble saying no.
Push over.
Yeah, oh, you like me? Sure. I'll do whatever you want.
It's also a great place for Venus to be.
It is, because it's her
It's
home.
very sociable. And
It's sociable, it's gregarious, affable. Libra's a sign of design and beauty and aesthetics. So she's actually at home also in that sign.
Well, if she's, kind of so open to flattery, she could be easily manipulated. Really?
Mm-hmm.
Or he.
But at the same time, Venus in Libra
Take that home.
bends over backwards to do things for those around them. Barb, question from the audience?
Comment.
Comment, thank you.
Martha from New Orleans said
Hi, Martha.
she has Venus in Virgo as her daughter does. She says it's hard.
Yes, our condolences to both. It's a tough life, someone has to live it. Remember, it's only there for 19 days out of every 225. Venus in Scorpio. This is what the sample chart has, Denzel Washington's chart. Again, it's going to be opposite its home in Taurus. With the social thought cells expressing from the I desire attitude, the affection should be given a high standard rather than finding satisfaction in dissipation. What about Venus in Scorpio? She's actually a little slutty in
I
that.
was gonna
I
say,
was going to say, like, very self-indulgent.
although I can't see Denzel as being slutty, You think?
No.
He might be expressing the other side of it, at least in public.
Of course,
Yeah.
it's conjunct Saturn.
Right, conjunct Saturn.
Right.
So-
So,
So
it's
that's
with
that whole
reserve
stance.
and caution and
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
patience, and
Well, but there was a time where he was,
he probably is.
before 26 years ago.
Right.
So, but also Venus in Scorpio can be secretive.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I have Venus in Scorpio.
So we wouldn't know if he was She's not going to kiss and tell. It's the great mystery. So, what happens with Venus in Scorpio is one becomes controlled by their passions at times. They just take over.
Do you find that true?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, with Venus in Scorpio, lust is all spelled in capitals. You know, it's just, that's what it feels like.
Okay. Sounds like fun.
Sometimes.
Unless you make them jealous. And then Venus in Scorpio can really suffer. Just like, it's the desire, and that, you know, the opposite signs, there are similarities that happens with opposite signs, and both Scorpio and Taurus are possessive signs.
Yeah.
Both Gemini and Sagittarius are restless mental signs.
Right.
Both Virgo and Pisces tend towards anxiety and worry. You know, both Libra and Aries are pioneering. They just do it in different ways. One is aggressive, the other is gregarious. Well, Venus and Sagittarius. Social thought selves expressing from the I-see attitude, the affection should find a worthy subject for their loyalty rather than impulsively center on one less desirable. That's kind of stilted language.
What did he just say?
Yeah, I mean, can somebody translate for me? Well, basically he's saying choose carefully,
Yeah.
choose wisely, choose well.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't go for second best.
Yeah. Venus in Sagittarius, though, if you think about it, Venus in Sagittarius is in the sign of the horse. So, if you study horses in nature, they live in
Yes.
harems.
And they're also a Venus animal, I think.
Are they?
I think, yeah, according to some. I
Yeah,
mean,
they live-
someone can.
They have multiple partners, and some don't get any. So, and they're roaming, they're roving. So Venus in Sagittarius really has a hard time settling down. Why? They're always looking for greener pastures. They're always thinking there's someone out there that's lovelier, or somebody that's more compatible, or younger, or cuter. So that's Venus in Sagittarius.
The way that's stated almost sounds like they're desperate for just anyone's rather than going for the quality.
Yes.
Am I reading?
Well,
Well, I think when the horse does settle down, then the best trait of Sagittarius is their loyalty.
Right.
So what happens is when they do finally fixate or bond with someone, the tendency for Venus as Sagittarius is it's difficult to bond. When they do, what he's saying is you better set your sights high, because
Okay.
otherwise you're giving your loyalty to someone that may not deserve it.
Okay, got it.
Comment or question?
Renee, well, comment, I think. Renee says, I have Venus in Libra in the 11th, and I'm always wanting to do things and make things for my friends.
And
And
how
we-
many friends do you have on that little island you live on, Renee?
And we like the fact that you do that.
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
Renee,
yeah.
I have to show you all.
It's in the shelf there.
Yeah, thank you, Vicki. Here's one of the items that Renee has made for her friends. So, this great book cover which we use for our healing ritual. All of our names are in here. So, yes, Renee, And your friends really like you and the things you make for them.
Martha says they should love to travel and always be wanting to learn.
Yeah, Venus and Sag loves learning, loves travel, and if you think of it as the romantic nature, it's like, what do they say, a ship in every port?
Yeah.
Venus in Capricorn, another tough place for Venus. With the social thought cells expressing from the I-use attitude, the affection should find satisfaction and harmony rather than be too greatly influenced by ambition and position. What does Venus fall in love with in Capricorn?
Status?
With one's status. They fall in love with somebody's ambition, with their achievements, what they're able to accomplish. Their standing in society or within the group becomes part of the aphrodisiac for them. Somebody who is driven, ambitious, goal-oriented, accomplished or famous will appeal to them. Venus in Aquarius. With the social thought cells expressing from the I know attitude, the affection should seek satisfaction in domestic life rather than expend themselves entirely on friends.
Renee.
Venus in Aquarius. So this is the sign of friendships. And Venus in Aquarius is friendly to whom? Everyone.
Yeah.
To the whole group. Now the challenge with that, when Venus is in Aquarius, also what I've discovered is Venus in Aquarius comes across as being friendly to everyone. So it's hard for someone to know whether you're interested in them or not. Whether you have a crush or not. It's not always determined by the person who may be the object of your affections, because they'll see you as being friendly in the same way you treat everyone else. It's the sign of the universal friendliness. Nevertheless, Venus is at her harmony in the sign of Aquarius, and yes, she does get to be friendly with everyone. Lastly, sweet Venus in Pisces.
I've got that one.
You are the
Difficult.
romantic.
Yeah.
It is and it isn't. Venus is at her exaltation in Pisces. This is considered the best placement for her. Pisces, the twin fish held together by a ribbon, is the symbol for soulmates, twin souls that are linked astrally to one another. Zane says, with the social thought cells expressing from the I believe attitude, the affection should seek those who can give like deep response, rather than expend on those who take but cannot give. They say there's a sucker born every day. Who was it? P.T. Barnum?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the people with Venus and Pisces.
Oh yeah. Well, I had a lot of that in my early life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was sometimes very hard to tell. I found it very hard.
There's some good actors out there, and then
Oh,
the
yeah.
world is also populated in a small proportion with psychopaths.
Well,
So they can spot someone like you, a mile off.
it's very my mom had Venus in Pisces, and it's very pleasant. It's a very pleasant energy. But, she believed in Cinderella, and, even into
There is no Cinderella.
Yeah,
Is
right.
And someday my prince won't come.
That's that rose-coloured glasses thing
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And then getting very disappointed. when
Well, and
people
that's
are not
the disappointment
like
thing,
that.
I think, is right.
Right, that's the downside to Pisces, is the disappointment.
Right.
But you've got to figure, between optimism and pessimism, if one has the choice of where to place their thoughts, it's pretty simple, to be Pollyanna, rather than Scrooge. So, it can't hurt you that much.
Yeah, right.
Unless you just really make bad choices over and over and over and over again. But In Pisces, Venus is sensitive and romantic. They want the candlelit dinners. You know, the violin was playing in the background.
Yeah, and I actually believe that that relationships can be deep and romantic perpetually. You know, I mean, not necessarily every minute.
Venus in Pisces.
No,
Yeah.
but you know, no,
This is your signature card.
no, I don't even mean I believe. I know that it can happen. I know that it can hapen.
Did you hear the key word out there? I believe.
No, well, that was a wrong word, because what I'm trying to say is a lot of people, you know, a lot of people are skeptical or whatever, and they say, oh, you know, it's not possible to be romantic and realistic or deep in a relationship.
It is, but not for the entire population.
That's right. Yeah.
There are those special few where
It can
that
happen.
can happen.
Yeah. But I think that actually that's interesting, because I've known people who've had a really difficult time with it. They can't see that the romantic side can exist along with the deep side.
Well, they might have Venus and Gemini.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about planets and houses. About another 35 minutes here.
Retrograde.
No, we did.
Are you telling us
Do
we're
we change the time today? or
tonight?
not?
We don't. We're doing a different thing.
Any questions from the audience out there in internet land?
No. I have a petition by Martha.
A petition? Is this
Whoa, it sounds
a
serious.
prayer petition, or is it a plea for?
Well, it's a plea.
Okay.
Let me, I'm gonna find it. She would like to have people, send love and light to her grandson who's leaving for Iraq this weekend.
Oh,
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah.
Let's all. Yeah, give us his name if you can actually
Put him on
do
the
that,
healing
and
list.
we'll put him on the healing list, Martha. Or if you don't want to
Well,
put it out.
his name's here.
Okay.
His, I don't know if I'm supposed to say it or not, his name is, I lost it.
Yeah, it may or may not be appropriate to broadcast that to everyone.
We'll put it on there.
Email us, Martha, and we'll put it on the healing. We'll put him on the healing list. All right. We've talked about this for the last 4 weeks. The houses are divisions of the horoscope, which correspond to different areas of thinking, activity, and interest. As a planet or planets occupy a house or houses, it brings its specific influence into that department of life. The planet closest to the house cusp is considered the ruler of that house. If there is more than one planet in the house, the other planets become the co-rulers.
Can you do? Is it possible to do aspects to cusps?
In Hermetic Astrology, we only do aspects to 2 of the cusps. And that is the angle on the ascendant, which is the cusp of the first house, and the angle on the midheaven, which is the cusp of the 10th house. Those are the only 2 cusps that we consider to have any strength that we would calculate aspects received by them from other planets. There are some other branches of astrology that do actually calculate aspects to cusp. I'm the keep it simple, stupid, the KISS version of astrology, which is actually, I think most things can be explained in astrology by simpler methods rather than by more extravagant methods. When a house is unoccupied, we look to the planet or planets ruling the sign on the cusp of the house. The house in which Venus falls in the birth chart is said to be subject to gratuities. This, basically, what is he saying? This is where you get tips. Where Venus is in your chart, you get little good things coming to you.
Would that also apply that when you're doing a progressed chart,
Yes.
that area will then show?
Where Venus has progressed in your chart, then that area becomes
Yeah.
subject to gifts. Well, in addition to gratuities, the house position of Venus indicates the area of our life through which we seek out love, romance, creativity, and friendship. So keep that in mind when you look at your own chart, and as we go through the house positions coming up next. Okay. And what Zane says in Hermetic Astrology is whatever house is occupied by Venus has a strong influence upon the affections, and through it, an appeal to the affections can readily be made. Aha! Now we know how to flirt with people. The things denoted by this house tend to prosper not through effort and initiative, but through kindnesses received because of grace of manners, and received through following the line of least resistance. He goes on to say that department of life ruled by the house occupied by Venus is subject to gratuities. You know what? The world is looking for love. So it's so important to pay attention to Venus in your chart. As a counselor, one of the things, I mean, this is one of the big topics that people call, look for, talk about. There's money, there's career, there's profession, but love and affection is a big deal. Most people in the world are somehow looking for a suitable mate. So, in Beginner's Horoscope Maker and Reader, Zane says, the social thought cells expressing through the personality, there is desire to please, and companionship is essential. Firmness should be cultivated, for it will please others.
Very definite.
So what does it mean? You're more hot if you're not a pushover. That's what it boils down to. Others will like you more if you don't yield so readily. But let's talk about Venus in the first house. What's the person like who has Venus there? Well, lucky them, they're generally attractive. And you know what? The universe likes beautiful people. Psychologists have done studies to prove that the attractive person has a much greater likelihood of being helped in a crisis on the street than the homely person. Bless their heart. Yeah. There have been sociological studies done to prove this.
It's attractive. It attracts people.
Mhm.
Their attention.
Beauty attracts. It attracts attention, and people are more inclined to assist you. So, the person with Venus in the first house can have grace, can have manners, can come across as being a very warm person. Somebody you want to hug or hang out with or get personal with. Venus in the second house. How would that express? Let's backtrack.
They get really
Hold that
big
thought.
tips.
They get big tips. Venus in the first house. Where would they look for love?
Nowhere near there.
If you're trying to use Venus as finding an avenue for love in your life, where are you going to look if she's in the first house?
Well, you're going to have to do something with yourself. I don't know. How would you do that?
Small appliances?
Oh, no.
You have to make yourself attractive. Just
You have to make yourself
Oh,
attractive.
okay. That's what you mean.
Oh, but I guess you could do that too.
Is that the placement for autoeroticism? Who knows?
lots of mirrors.
Venus in the first house. Well, it could be around personal interest. Find a personal interest you have that you're keenly involved in, and then go select other people that share that. If you want to do pottery, go to a pottery workshop. If it's astrology, go there. But find your personal interest. But the other area is that the first house has to do with health and appearance. So these may be gym buddies. Persons who are looking for companionship through a health-related activity.
Could be
The Sierra Club and hiking, or the bicycling club,
skiing.
the ski club, or just hanging out in the lodge and drinking cocoa and looking cute and, eyeing the skiers. Who knows? but it's looking in some realm of athleticism or activity or in a profound area of personal interest. Second house, Vicky said big tips. Venus in the second house can make money, and can make money creatively, either actively through the arts or art-related activities, or just through anything that involves buying and selling. Excuse me. Indian food for dinner.
It was really good though.
It was going down. Coming up, it was a whole new flavor. So, in Venus in the second house, who knows? You might meet someone at a garage sale, or standing in line at the bank, or to your favorite flea market and adding things to your collection of ancient instruments, or whatever the thing is that you collect. That's how you can find love or affection, or find your social life. And Barb is starting to stand and point.
Got me. Marianne said that her Venus is in the second house, and she says money has not been that easy, but it's getting a little easier.
Does she get gifts? Do people give her things? Though,
Yeah,
to
do you
help her
ever
get
get
by?
tips or gratuities or things like that?
There's never a time like this.
Oh, that's right. You're not gonna I want you to respond now. But think about that. You don't actually have to respond, Marianne, but think about that. I have a Venus-ruled second house, but the second house is one of the weakest areas of my chart. And people always give me stuff. I hope none of you are out there watching, but I always have to figure out ways to recycle things, because you do get gifts, and it's not always things you want or can use.
So the social side of things might come through your recycling efforts.
Yes. And the other part to that question, or the answer to that question, is one has to look at the aspects received by Venus. The challenge with Venus governing the second house is, if you remember back there in our description of Venus, she can, and this isn't implying that you are, but Venus sometimes looks for the line of least resistance or wants things to come easily. Whereas when effort is placed there, one can actually market and make money. But the nature of a Venus-ruled second house sometimes means that one wants to make money for others, and they end up sacrificing themselves in the process. See if we can get through all 12 of these. Did I read that?
Marianne came back with, I'm going to make more money now that I'm committed to my art.
And that'll probably work. That will work. With the social thought cells expressing through possessions, money coming through, little effort is shown. Friendships and kindness should be cultivated. I'd say money comes through great effort. Don't believe that. You'll get gratuities and tips and gifts, but money comes through great effort. So make effort with art.
Environment makes a difference too.
This was well put. Vicki said environment makes a difference. And that's absolutely true. As we know, not only in this worldwide recession, money is difficult for most at this point. There are some environments which are more successful for money making than others.
Right.
There were 2 years in my life where I lived in a teepee in the woods. Take it from me, there were many opportunities to make money. The environment did not support that. There was a slight barter system going on with neighbors, and I'd have to hitchhike down to San Francisco and sell beads on the street and arts and crafts to make money. So environment is a factor. Third house, with the social thought cells expressing through education, benefit from relatives and travel is shown. Companionship of relatives and neighbors should be cultivated. So, you're looking for a date? Walk around the block. Someone might see you. The other option is attend those family weddings. You might meet someone there. Or take a class. Venus in the 3rd house tends to fall in love while studying something or going to the local bookstore, magazine rack, etc. Venus in the 4th house, with the social thought cells expressing through the home, a pleasant and artistic home is shown. Making the home also useful should be cultivated. Now that's sounding really romantic. But yes, you know, a beautifully decorated nest is attractive to others, and some birds and pack rats, etc., have, you know, discovered, bowerbirds have discovered ways of doing that to attract mates. And if you have Venus in the 4th house, much like Venus in Cancer, you want love in a cottage, as they say in England.
Well, I have Venus in Cancer in the 4th.
Mhm.
How's that? I really like being at home.
Yeah.
So does that also, or can that also indicate, like where Venus is in, an indication of where you'll actually find people who love interest or friends and things
Absolutely.
like
Where
Okay.
Venus is in your chart is where you find love.
that? Right.
You've got to pay attention to that. Now, we also have to pay attention to the 5th house and the 7th house, and that certainly is a topic for another day, but the 5th house is love affairs. The 7th house is partnerships, companionships, marriage. And these are two different categories from the astrological perspective.
Right.
Venus in the 5th house, with the social thought cells expressing through pleasure, there is strong attraction to the opposite sex. Steadfast loyalty to one should be cultivated. Unless you have Venus in Gemini or Sagittarius, then options are necessary.
It might have to be polygamy, or what's the other one? What's the other one called?
Plural marriage?
No, but I mean, polygamy, isn't that multiple wives?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then what's multiple husbands?
Oh.
So, or maybe that
Oh.
is polygamy.
I think it
It can
is.
go either way.
Yes. Clark?
Paul Johnson said he has Venus conjunct Saturn in the 4th. He says he's always loved old houses.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
that is a certain special form of love.
It's a lot of work, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll go bankrupt with that love. But Venus with Saturn conjunct, as we saw, Denzel is somebody who has Venus-Saturn conjunction, and that can also make for loyalty in relationships in an old house.
Tap it on.
But the social thought cells expressing through work benefit through employees, especially those of the opposite sex, is shown. The lighter kinds of work should be sought. Now, I have to make a point here. Most employers now post in their places of work, which are manifestos about, what do they call it in the workplace? Sexual harassment in the workplace. So if you have Venus in the 6th house, you're out of luck. Because it's considered very problematic to date one's coworkers and colleagues. There are issues, boundary issues tied in with that. Yet Venus in the 6th house makes one love their work and or tend to draw in the affections of their colleagues and coworkers. And this can be both their social life can come through their work environment. You know, the office birthday parties and the bowling league after work and those type of activities become important to persons with Venus in the 6th house. But sleeping with one's coworkers is generally considered verboten, and one can get in really big trouble for that.
Could it indicate like a...
And it happens all the time.
Could it indicate a caring kind of mentor-y relationship? Or is that something different?
That would probably be the 10th house.
Yeah, so not a mentor-y kind of relationship.
These are playmates.
No, these are just, having fun with your coworkers. So it's so-and-so's birthday, bring a cake.
Yeah.
Venus in the 7th house.
I've thought that.
With the social thought cells expressing through partnership, harmony in marriage is shown. Artistic appreciation should be cultivated for practical ends.
That's kind of odd.
Mhm.
That seems really weird. It seems very specific. The artistic appreciation is cultivated for practical ends. Doesn't seem to really relate to me.
Nor to me,
It's,
but I didn't write that, so.
No, but it seems a rather narrow cultivation as an antidote or as a...
I mean, what is this? Knitting
Well,
toilet paper covers or
Well, the
Yeah.
antidote for Venus is what?
Saturn? Mhm.
So
That's what. Yeah.
Saturn and
Thank you
Sun.
for pointing that out.
So
What's being pointed out here is Venus tends, again, in her negative qualities towards pliancy, towards inability to say no, and Saturn is her antidote, which means setting up boundaries, having firm boundaries.
That's right.
And cultivating a more practical
Structure.
more
Structure,
structure. So
yeah.
maybe knitting neck scarves in winters for
But that
those
could
who
also
know.
be in the nature of a relationship itself, setting up a more structured, I mean, not in a rigid way, but
Why?
more,
What's going to happen to the person with Venus in the 7th house? They're going to give it all away for free.
yeah, and also they can get really swamped.
yeah, because they gave it all away for free.
Yeah, they
They didn't
overwhelmed.
give
Yeah.
me back.
So boundaries are really important with Venus in that position because she's usually prominent when she's in an angular house.
Yeah.
And the tendency is, again, to be pliant to those one encounters in the public. And therefore, out of the, I think Oprah calls it the disease to please. Through that nature, one wants to be loved by others, and usually that. Have you ever tried saying no to dogs or small children? They don't like you. Nobody really likes that word, but guess what? All of us need to hear it on occasion.
Right. So then, this artistic appreciation, how do you think that he was trying to relate that to the marriage or the partnership? Or
It's
whatever?
with Venus, and I would think with Venus in the 7th house, you would tend to be you would have more of an artistic sensibility about what a relationship should be, rather than having a practical attitude towards what they really are.
One
Does
of the
that make
things
sense?
I've discovered, this may not apply to you, but in general, the Venus in the 7th house, Venus, whatever planet's in your 7th house shows what you are attracted to in companionship. The person with Venus there is attracted to artists and or to attractive
yeah.
people. Stylish people or persons who are naturally, blessed with attractiveness. So,
And that may not always be good for you.
I know for a fact that that's not right. And there may be the attraction, but it doesn't actually eventuate because of the other dynamics in my chart. I mean, it may eventuate, but it doesn't last long.
right, it's not necessary. It's the thing that it's what draws the bee to the flower, but doesn't necessarily make it stay there.
It could also just mean, though, somebody who's got very strong, other Venus aspects like harmony. Someone who's
Yes,
into
the person with
harmony.
Venus in the 7th house wants somebody who's beautiful, harmonious, aesthetic, appreciates music, and is affectionate, is warm, wants to hold hands, and as you said earlier, have romance forever. With the social thought cells expressing through inheritance, benefit through gifts and inheritance is shown. Friendships should be widely cultivated. You never know who's going to write you into your will. Their will. With Venus in the 8th house.
Second career.
You don't. I've known people with Venus in the 8th house where, somebody they've helped out just gives them $100,000. Now that's a gratuity.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, it's a remarkable thought, but somebody has to be the recipient of gifts.
I'll open my hand.
So it could be a companion or something, and that would be a perfect job.
Also, Venus house knows how to make money for other people. Oftentimes, buyers for stores can have that position there. They have the eye to select merchandise that others will ultimately profit from. If Venus is in your 9th house, expressing through philosophy, benefit through publicity, publicly expressed ideas, or travel is shown. Artistic expression of ideas should be cultivated. I find Venus in the 9th house, the person loves to learn. They love to travel. Generally, Venus there will draw foreigners into their lives. Or if they ever need a date, all they have to do is go hang out at the restaurant at the airport. Someone will pick them up. It's the right spot for them. With the social thought cells expressing through honor, the good opinion of others is shown. Artistic and refined methods in business should be cultivated. Person with Venus in the 10th house needs to love their career. They have to do something. They have to have a mission in life that they love. They can, again, depending on how it's aspected, draw favors of bosses, superiors, authority figures, people in standing. They may choose a career related to the arts, but not necessarily so. Whatever it is, it has to be something that they have a deep affection for. Barb.
Martha says, I have Venus and Virgo in the 9th house. And I've done a great deal of traveling, and learning is a passion for her.
Well, I'm jealous, Martha. Learning's a passion for me, but I haven't done a great deal of traveling. Others tell me I have, but I never think I have. Venus in the 11th house. With the social thought cells expressing through friends, artistic friends, and friends who will favor in many ways are shown. A positive attitude and study of practical methods should be used in the effort to realize the hopes. Just a little abstract, but again, what Zane is doing here, what Benjamin's doing here, is applying the antidote of Saturn to Venus in that house position. Venus in the 11th house, they love their friends, and it becomes very confusing. This is one of the other areas where they can have boundary problems, because they'll want to handpick their lovers from their circle of friends.
I have a question back at the 8th about inheritance. How widely can that be interpreted? Like inheritance, can that be also ancestral?
It can be.
Like legacies, not just in physical.
No, it's not just receiving, the trust fund from Uncle Will. There are other inheritances that one receives, but it can also be, there are other gifts. The family photo album or grandma's washstand may be passed down. Or there is that, of course, that inheritance of, DNA and racial memory, and all of that could be shown there as well. One may strongly identify with an ancestor. But Venus in the 8th house, if we stretch this to think of the 8th house as other unseen entities, Venus there also tends to bring in the protective benefit of the spirit world. That there are generally loving forces around one and or loved ones that have passed on tend to continue to flow their affection down to that person. And I know this sounds a little woo-woo, but that's part of the story.
And
Yeah,
of
well, I
the
think it's
psychic
very-
houses.
Yeah.
and that's also lineage, like the benefits. If there was a lineage that was favourable,
Right, and there are other-
there are benefits today from that, the knowledge of that lineage.
Mm-hmm. No, there are
Yeah.
ancestral traditions that are passed down in both tribal cultures and in Orthodox religions and in the area of apprenticeship and craftsmanship, where there are lineages that are passed down. You were smiling, Bart. Did somebody write a joke?
Martha and Marianne are kind of chatting back and forth, and Martha was encouraging Marianne to try designing clothes in her art. And Marianne just said, well, after I write a book and paint paintings and
Open my bistro.
design clothes, all of it.
12th house. We're at the end of our class tonight with the social thought cells expressing through disappointment, sorrows through the affections are shown. There should be practical work to assist those in distress and to contribute to the welfare of the needy. Basically, Benjamin is saying that Venus in the 12th house is not the luckiest place for your love life. My observation of this in clients is Venus in the 12th house oftentimes can bring in unrequited love. That's falling in love with somebody who's basically unavailable. And or Venus in the 12th house sometimes indicates clandestine love affairs. This could be somebody having a mistress, or what do you call it, a mister? Is that the the other choice in that
Doesn't
dynamic?
sound very nice, does it?
Just stay away from my mister.
Yeah.
He's just called a lover.
A lover? Okay. It can be that, a paramour.
That's even
yeah,
nicer.
that's a nice
Yeah.
term, isn't it? It can represent that. It can either be falling in love with someone who's unavailable to you, or falling in love with somebody who's unavailable to you.
I've got an
Or where you have to be secretive about your romances, or where would, with the 12th house, you'd meet someone in prison.
in prison. Yeah,
Oh,
prison marriages.
There's a lot of that going on these days, I hear.
Yeah. Or actually, you could meet someone through being involved in a charitable pursuit.
I was thinking with when people are doing the volunteer work abroad and all of those situations.
It could be through the Peace Corps, or it could be through getting down on Thanksgiving and working in the bread line and dishing up soup. You might meet someone there who's actually a selfless person rather than a self-centered person. That could actually turn out to be a good choice for you if you have Venus in the 12th house. So
that would really continue to the elevation of it.
now, in order to end on time, I'm going to move forward to the homework. I do hope that all of you have actually been doing your homework, not for my sake, but for your own edification. It's a really good personal process. It's a form of taking a personal inventory. Those of you who are just tuning into the class, this week, go and download the handouts for the past classes, and I believe they're now archived, so you can go back and watch the previous classes and work with the homework, and even tear out this sheet of the homework and start compiling it into a 10-page booklet for yourself. It'll become part of a larger personal inventory that we do over the years. So, with this one, if you can read, it's self-explanatory. Venus in my chart falls in the sign of. Some of the best expressions of this sign are. Some of the worst expressions of this sign are. In my chart, Venus falls in the name the house. The activities ruled by this house are. Some of the ways that I express my affections and creativity associated with this house are, fill in the blank. Then look at your Astrodyne report and put down the relative power of my Venus by Astrodynes is, the percentage of power is, the relative harmony or discord of my Venus is, and the way I perceive this affecting me is. Then write down the positive qualities of Venus that you express and the negative qualities of Venus that you express, and tuck this away into your personal inventory work. Yes, Barb?
Glenda, Colorado, asked a question for you about Venus in the fifth house. Would a person with Venus in the fifth house find love through artistic activity, games, or through activities with children, through a matchmaking service, or could you give more info on possibilities where one could find love if Venus is?
Yeah, one could find love watching children at the playground. You know, there could be another single parent out there that'll, or deciding to take classes related to the arts, or art history classes, or what might be a theater appreciation class could be a good way to go. Engaging in community theater or community performances are all ways. I'm not sure if it indicates a matchmaker being in the fifth house, but definitely take dance classes. Depending on what part of the world you're in, learn their particular dance style and go out and be around people who like to have fun, play games. Yes?
Would it be helpful to look at the other aspects that it makes to find out?
And the sign in which Venus falls. You look to the sign in which Venus falls, which might help to narrow some of these descriptions. And as Vicky, the other V word, has pointed out, you also look to aspects received by Venus from other planets and look towards the strongest of those aspects. The planet involved in the house position of that planet will give you key insights into the particular direction or trend to go in terms of looking for love. All right, and this brings our, somewhere in there.
It says it's the end of
Yeah, it was the end. But before it's the end, next week Mars, February 25th Jupiter, and then 4 weeks in March, and then I go on vacation. So that is the plan. I hope you're all having a good time and that you come back next week for the aggressive urges of the soul. Ooh. You better be here. Questions, additions, comments?
Everybody, well, they're starting to come in now. One accentuating the positive in their chart and then apply the alchemy to the negative aspects to neutralize them. Is that in the work? Is that the work?
That is the work. And what we're doing in this particular class, I'm just introducing you to the idea of what the alchemical metals are, how they express, where in our soul's journey we first develop those qualities, and what the antidotes are. You can see in Benjamin's work, both in the planets and the signs and the houses, the concept of antidoting energy is introduced here. But this is a class where we're sort of learning the alphabet. And we're learning the alphabet in very deep, rich vocabulary. In a future class, we'll actually do the alchemy and work on how do we put this together and transmute what's in the chart. But my thoughts on the class that will follow this, probably in April or May, is to do a 5-week class on progressing the chart. Basically, looking to see, what will happen and when will it happen by looking at a chart. So I think that's once we have a good analysis of the natal chart, I want to take this group into how does one progress a chart. And then maybe this fall we'll look into the alchemy, because alchemy can be applied to the elements of the natal chart, but it's so essential to apply alchemy to one's progress chart, because throughout our lives we're having stuff happening now that needs to be addressed in a constructive way. All right, good night to
Martha.
all.
Marianne says, mahalo, great to be with you. I'm just saying thank you for a great class.
You're welcome. All of you are welcome. Come back
Excited
next
for
week.
coming back.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.